Hello, my name is Brenda Suggett, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals. I would like to give a warm welcome to all of today's registrants. Once again, CARSP is proud to partner with Parachute Canada in bringing webinars on important topics to Canada's road safety professionals. Today's topic, Taking Action, the Global Plan for the New Decade of Action for Road Safety 2021 to 2030, is the second webinar CARSP and Parachute are delivering on the global plan. Back in October of 2021, CARSP and Parachute delivered the first webinar on this topic, which was meant to serve as an introduction to the second decade of action for road safety and to the global plan. Today's webinar is about action. Before I proceed, I would first like to give a land acknowledgement on behalf of Parachute. Parachute acknowledges that our national office sits on what has been the ancestral land of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Anishinaabe Nation, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, since time immemorial to today. Now to cover off a few instructions before introducing today's speakers. Questions will be left until both speakers have presented. Please enter your questions into the Q&A area at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentations. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speakers, Valerie Smith and Raheem Dilger. Valerie Smith has worked as Director of Programs at Parachute Canada since 2014. Valerie oversees Parachute's programs, campaigns, and multiple networks focused on road safety. Valerie is a strong Vision Zero advocate and presents on Vision Zero in Canada on a regular basis. Prior to working at Parachute, Valerie held a number of management positions focused on international development, youth, and health promotion. Valerie has an MA in International and Comparative Education from the University of Toronto. Raheem Dilger is a level 2 road safety professional with 27 years of experience in Canada and internationally. Over the past 10 years, Raheem has operated TransSafe Consulting Limited, through which he assists road agencies across Canada in the development, delivery, and evaluation of road safety plans and projects. Raheem is currently the co-chair of the TAC Vision Zero and Safe System Subcommittee and president of our association, CARSP. Without further ado, Valerie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Brenda. I'm just going to talk really slowly for about 1 minute as I see we're still having a number of participants trickle in. So yeah, welcome everyone, and really excited to chat today about the Global Decade of Action. We're at about 70 participants right now, and I believe we have over 170 registered. So people will be joining us as we go. But thank you very much for joining us today, and we can begin. And just a heads up that my colleague Julie is controlling the slides for us today. So there might be a little pause here and again as we get organized. So for our agenda, we are going to be doing a very short overview of the global plan. For those of you who did not join us back in November, when we first presented on the Global Decade of Action for Road Safety, we will give you a high-level summary of what the decade and the global plan is all about. What we really wanted to focus on today is what's been happening in Canada since the launch at the end of October. What have CARSP and Parachute and some of our other partners been doing to further the plan? We also wanted to discuss one of the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety's initiative that's coming up in the 3rd week of May that is called Commit to Act, and it's all about supporting the work of NGOs and civil society on the global decade. I'm going to pass it over to Raheem at that point to talk about the roles of NGOs, local government, and to speak about the upcoming CARSP conference. Next slide. Okay, so just a little bit on the background. In September 2020, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 2021 to 2030, the new decade of action. And this was following up on the 2011 previous decade. 194 countries agreed to adoption, including Canada. And the target is to prevent at least 50% of road traffic deaths and injuries by 2030. The World Health Organization and the United Nations developed what is called the Global Plan. And the plan was developed in order to support countries in reaching this goal. It's a hands-on document. It has a lot of action items and ideas in order for countries to mobilize around the global decade. The next slide is going to be a video, just a short video on the overview of the global plan and the global decade of action. So sit back and enjoy the next few minutes of the video.
Even though it's a 10-year target, there is not a moment to lose. We have had enough of talking, and now it's time to act.
Destine presupuesto, el cual es un gran mensaje establecido en este plan mundial publicado recientemente por la Organización Mundial de Salud y la ONU.
Involucrar a las ONGs puede ayudar a acelerar el progreso hacia los objetivos 2030, porque somos los ojos, somos los oídos y las voces de las comunidades de todo el mundo. Ofrecemos una perspectiva centrada en las personas.
Malaysia has adopted a national road safety plan 2022-2030, setting a target to reduce fatalities and serious injuries by 50%.
With your support, my ministry's position to prioritize and implement an integrated safe system.
شهر ایمنی رو برای کاربران راه از جمله عاملین پیاده، موتورسیکلت سواران، دوچرخه سواران و تمامی عزیزانی که از راههای شهری استفاده می‌کنند ان شاءالله فراهم کنیم در دهه پیش.
No hay política pública sin la participación de la sociedad civil.
Pour l'adoption d'une méthode participative à travers l'implication de la société civile et des organisations non gouvernementales pour la réalisation des objectifs communs.
El mundo cambió y la complejidad que tienen los problemas, como por ejemplo la seguridad vial, requiere de trabajo y articulación entre los gobiernos y la ciudadanía.
Thanks very much, Julie. So we're going to talk a little bit about the global plan, and I really like this visual that the UN and WHO came up with. As you can see, the global plan really focuses on the adoption of the safe systems approach. So over on the left, you've got the safe systems in big orange letters. And they advocate for the safe system approach to be the overarching strategy, with calls to action on ensuring and advocating for governments around the world, including Canada at the municipal, provincial, and federal level, to use evidence-based management, especially around multimodal transport, speed management, safe and equitable access to mobility options, as well as a focus on public transport or transit and a response to emergency calls. How to do it and who does it are the other big pieces. And so we're going to talk a lot today about who is doing it and how to do it. For those of you who have just joined this, and this is your first webinar on the global plan, this is a really great resource to read. It will, as I said, it will spell out everything that NGOs and other actors are going to be doing to support the global decade. Next slide, please. So what have we been doing in Canada since the launch in October? So back in November, after the official launch of the decade, Parachute and CARSP issued a joint statement in a media release to support the global plan. We also issued a joint letter to the federal transport minister, asking him to take part in what was called an official handover of the global plan, where Parachute and CARSP would physically hand the global plan to someone at the federal level. Unfortunately, we did not get, unfortunately, that didn't happen. So Canada is missing from the map you can see here. However, we are optimistic. We have had a Parachute, we have had some calls with the policy advisors at the Ministry of Transport to talk to them further about the global decade and the role the federal government will play. We've also recently sent an email, an invite asking who from the federal government will participate at an upcoming United Nations Heads of State meeting that's happening in New York at the end of June. So we're awaiting response on that as well. Next slide, please. Also, over the last 5 months, Parachute's been working with approximately 20 NGOs representing not only the road safety space, but folks from climate change, from sustainable and green cities, mobility organizations, and organizations that focus on public health and equity as well. And this is in our Change for Good Roads initiative. We published a great report that came out of a series of roundtables. The report's a very interesting read, and it looks at the intersections amongst the different sectors and how we can work with each other to further not only road safety agendas, but also some of the other social justice issues that come up in the Sustainable Development Goals. Many of these organizations that we've followed up with have committed to working with Parachute and our other national leaders like CARSP to mobilize around these efforts and to strategize on some common action around the global decade. We also took a lead role in developing a North American call to action. This call to action was done in collaboration with some of our colleagues in the United States. It's a 3-page document. We did receive input from TURF and CARSP, as well as some other stakeholders. It's a great document that looks at a high-level approach from a North American perspective on how we're going to actually implement the plan, what we're going to focus on. For any of you on the call today that are interested in not only reading it, but in being part of our contacts of groups who want to take part in the mobilization, you can email me, vsmith@parachute.ca. I'll share that again at the end. And I'm working, as I said, with a team of about 20 other NGOs, as well as our peers at CARSP and other organizations. The call to action that I'm just speaking of and that we can share with you if you shoot me an email essentially mirrors a lot of the action items from the global plan, but it's contextualized to Canada and the United States. Following the call to action, Parachute and CARSP also participated in a hybrid meeting that was organized by the Global Alliance of NGOs in Budapest. We also had an opportunity there to meet with other peers and champions from countries all around the world who are strategizing on the global decade of action. So it was pretty exciting because it really made us feel like we were really part of a global movement on road safety. So this is just a quote taken from the North American call to action. And as I said, it's a short and sweet document and happy to share further. It's also our hope that we're going to have a meeting at the CARS conference, which Raheem will be speaking about. And we'd like to invite organizations, researchers, anyone from civil society who would like to be involved around the mobilization on the decade to take part in that via conference call. But if you're there in person in Sudbury at the conference, then I think it's a great opportunity for us to meet and flesh out our role in Canada. Next slide, please. Commit to Act. So this is a campaign that was developed by our colleagues at the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. It is being held, it's a week of action being held from May 16th to the 20th. And basically, countries are going to be using their regional calls to action defined by us, by the Alliance members, by other stakeholders, to support civil society, NGOs, to help them engage with with various levels of government, including municipal, provincial, and federal government, asking them to support and engage with the global plan. The Commit to Act campaign specifically has a big focus on 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limits and reductions in areas that are highly densely populated and in urban residential areas. It also calls for an investment in road safety and the involvement of NGOs in decision making. So some of the activities that are going to be included during this week, the Global Alliance is making it very turnkey for all of us to take part. They're developing social media messaging, calls to action for us to share with our government officials at whatever level we are engaging with our government officials. They're holding a Twitter party on May 18th where they're hoping that as many folks will get involved as possible so we can have a big mobilization effort at a global level on Commit to Act. They're developing signboards and social media frames that can be used for calls to action during that week. And Parachute's going to be sharing all of these through our Vision Zero network, as well as CARSP with their network. So we will remind you closer to the week and provide all the resources for you to download. This is an example of one of the ideas that the Global Alliance has used in the past and does create a lot of buzz and stir if you are also looking to do and seek any media attention. And this is simply called Pile of Shoes Display. And it really looks at trying to create a visual to provoke thought on how many people die on our roads in Canada and around the world. They are suggesting the signs are posted in an area where we are advocating for reduced speed. So that wraps up my segment of the presentation. As I said, happy to share more information on the call to action, as well as the Commit to Act campaign. And really hoping that we see some of you at the CARS conference where we can talk more about it. And please feel free to email me or reach out for any more information around the specific mobilization plans. Over to you, Raheem.
Thank you, Valerie, for starting us off. And I'm happy to cover the next couple of items, which is really a continuation and providing more information further to the webinar that was held in October, where we spoke in very general terms about the role of NGOs and governments. I wanted to recognize here that a lot of you who are joining in are members of these various organizations, whether they be NGOs or different levels of government. There's a role for all of us to play, and in many ways you're already playing that role, and hopefully you'll hear something today that will just help you further those initiatives in the interest of our ultimate shared objective of zero fatalities and serious injuries and 50% or better by the end of this decade. So I'll just talk briefly about about each of these, and hopefully there's something you can all take from it. So first of all, there are such a wide range of NGOs that are in operation around the world and in Canada, and they come from various sectors. And this isn't intended to be an exhaustive list, but it includes academic institutions, industry associations, such as CARS, Parachute, others, civil society, youth, advocacy, private organizations, and of course the United Nations itself that is kind of overseeing the whole global plan in the decade. So I'll talk a bit about each of these. So in terms of academia and industry associations, sharing knowledge is the key mandate of these organizations, to generate that evidence on the problem itself, the size of the problem, the causes, as well as on the potential effects of interventions, whether they be infrastructure interventions or enforcement, education, or otherwise. As well, there are training programs that are increasingly becoming more and more available with respect to road safety and Vision Zero. And I've just given one example here on this slide of the Transportation Association of Canada, who is going to be launching an online road safety training program that was supported by CARSP and the Canadian Institute of Transportation Engineers and a number of other funding partners that you see listed there. This is just a snapshot from TAC's website, so you could go there if you want to learn more about that. I believe it's starting sometime this year. I believe sometime in the summer or perhaps the fall. So that's something to look forward to. It's quite a comprehensive course. There's a number of other training programs that are available through CARS, Parachute, and others. So it's a great opportunity to build up your own knowledge base, as well as to connect with others. So so moving on, the youth is a big area which is we need to focus effort on, because it's the generation that will inherit the outcomes of our decisions. As well, we know that significant cultural change is required among the public in order to reach our ultimate goals, and the youth are our best chance to affect that change in the future. So there's various tools that are available, starting with road safety education in the classroom. I know in many jurisdictions in the country, and I'm in BC, and so I know the Insurance Corporation of BC, for example, has developed a whole curriculum for road safety education in schools. So we need to all just make sure we know that which of these programs exist, and to try to get them into the classrooms if they're not already being covered. We know that the classroom is there's a lot to cover, but we don't want road safety education to be left out of it. There's of course many programs that are in place for schools as well, such as school travel planning, safe routes, crossing guards, and walking school bus, that both instill good habits and build that safety consciousness among our young people, so that when they get to that age where they perhaps do start driving, they're already kind of have that instilled in them. But even for that teenage or the group that starts driving, we just need to be all need to be more creative and think of innovative ideas such as smartphone apps or simulation tools that can better impart what are the risks of unsafe driving, as we still do see the most fatalities and serious injuries among our youth drivers, and we'd like to reverse that trend. Next. So in terms of funding, of course, government funds many programs, NGOs fund in the capacity that they are able to, but I just wanted to maybe highlight one other possible source of funding that perhaps could be further explored by all of us, given the types of industries that they're in, and the mandate that they may already have with respect to road safety, but perhaps they could be brought into more of the conversations than they have been, and they may have that capacity to lend. So resource industries such as the oil and resource industry, the automobile industry, in terms of being part of those conversations of the need to emphasize safety features as being standard in all of these vehicles, and to encourage the public decision making be based on those safety features. Insurance companies, I already mentioned ICBC, there's Desjardins, there's other insurance companies that are already active in the space of public road safety. Trucking companies, of course, they're on the roads as well, and so can play a big part in the safe operation of the roads. Beverage companies, safety suppliers of equipment, for work zones or for the roads. As well as technology companies. And, technology, of course, is an area that we need to look at ways of utilizing more and more. CARSP has a technology project, which you can find out about on the CARSP website. And lastly, the kind of the international, lead for the decade and the global plan is the United Nations. So rather than speaking kind of on too much about what they do, it's better to, if you're able to visit the links that are on this slide. They are serious about this topic, which is why this is the decade, and are, I think, happy to provide as many resources as you may need. So please do take advantage of that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the role of local government, and again, try to quickly go through this just to give a few examples of things that I know a lot of you are already doing, or perhaps could look at start doing or do to a larger extent. So a number of things that government can do, including adopting a Vision Zero policy, developing supporting legislation, developing goals and targets, developing strategic and action plans, implementing the safe system principles that Val had referred to earlier. But we'll give a couple of examples of how we might be able to do that. Dedicate sustainable funding, conduct monitoring and evaluation, and of course, a key message that you've already heard from Val is the importance of engaging NGO partners in government decision making. So an example of a municipality in Canada that has adopted a Vision Zero policy or resolution, and there is a long list now, a growing list, especially among the larger municipalities. I think the smaller municipalities have, a ways to go in terms of very actively adopting a Vision Zero policies or resolutions. So the City of Toronto, Vision Zero 2.0 Road Safety Plan, their policy statement states that the city is committed to Vision Zero and accepts its fundamental message. Fatalities and serious injuries on our roads are preventable, and we must strive to reduce traffic-related deaths and injuries to zero. So this is the type of statement that governments can choose to make. And then, of course, a statement is just a statement, and then putting the programs behind it, which the City of Toronto has done in a very significant way. Next. Developing supporting legislation and regulations is a big part of us working towards zero. We know that in BC, for example, a large part of that decline in fatalities over the last decade or so has been with changes to legislation, related to impaired driving, related to things like the graduated licensing program, which in its published strategy is being attributed for a reduction of fatalities among the young generation. Another kind of a key policy change that a lot of municipalities are looking at or have already made now, such as the City of Edmonton, is a lower default speed limit in certain areas, such as residential areas or core areas. So, for example, the City of Edmonton in 2020 passed a motion to reduce the speed to 40 kilometers an hour for residential roads, and that rollout has taken place, I know, in Calgary as well, and in a number of other municipalities across the country. Next. Thanks. Further than just adopting a Vision Zero, to make it more concrete and increase accountability, some municipalities or provinces are adopting interim targets or attaching a timeline to reaching that ultimate goal of zero. The City of Lethbridge is one of the more recent to add themselves to that list, to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities on its road network by 2040. and then to look at interim targets such as 50% by 2030, which reflects the International Decade of Action goals. And a lot of this things like Vision Zero principles and the targets and programs are documented in strategic plans or action plans that different levels of government are developing. We know from some of the more recent environmental scans that I think it's up to 35 now municipalities across the country, and I think it's 5 provinces have developed strategic or action plans in support of road safety, and many of those do endorse Vision Zero and safe system principles. And here you just see a few examples of those. And to kind of operationalize, let's say the adoption of Vision Zero and safe system principles, you could look at it in terms of these areas. So the 4 components that you see in color in this circle are safe roads and roadsides, safe speeds, safe vehicles, safe road use. I know there's a few variations of the circle that you've seen in different jurisdictions, but we can. I think the key point is to recognize that we need interventions in all of these areas, as well as in the other aspects that kind of on the outer ring of the circle, in terms of using innovation, legislative tools, looking at how we educate and admit people to the system, and leadership and capability. But I'm just going to quickly present an example for each of those 4 safe system components. So among safe road users, one of the key components, one of the many things that we can do is, in terms of infrastructure, is to implement protected facilities. So separated and buffered facilities, for example, bicycle lanes adjacent to kind of higher speed arterial roads. And basically that separates the conflict points, provides the space that encourages these types of modes of transportation, but provides the necessary protections. Also on higher speed roads, looking at, for example, just vehicles where there is the risk of potentially fatal or serious injury collision from crossing over into the opposing lanes, looking at providing separation through raised median barriers is an excellent option, and a much more practical option, rather than reducing the speed limit to a point where it would kind of deteriorate the whole function of that roadway to move traffic. But a collision with a barrier is typically much less severe than a collision with the other direction of traffic. Next. So in the area of safe speeds, it's well documented about the impact of even small incremental changes in speed to the outcomes of collisions, especially involving pedestrians. So you can see here, and you've probably seen some versions of this slide before, that show the difference between 50, 40, and 30, and the number of people that we can save by encouraging speeds that are low enough so that if there was such an impact, then the likelihood of surviving is much higher. 9 out of 10 in the case of 30 kilometers an hour, compared to only 2 out of 10 at 50. Next. And safe vehicles, one part of safe vehicles is about the safety features, and what we talked about, and the coming of autonomous vehicles is going to have a big impact on vehicle safety. But one item that shouldn't be overlooked as well is looking at what are the safest forms of transportation. And time again, it's proven that transit is the safest form of travel. So any shift that we can encourage to public transit is going to translate itself to fewer fatalities and serious injuries on our roads. So I think the last couple of items that we had on the list of examples of what local government can do is dedicate sustainable funding. Very easy to say that, harder to do. But going back to City of Toronto as an example, they're doing it, and these are some of the funds that have been dedicated to implement Vision Zero initiatives. Certainly, it's much more practical to dedicate funding if you have a dedicated funding source, whether it be from automated fine revenue or fuel taxes or other sources. Otherwise, it really just depend on making the business case, as well as reallocating funding or yeah, looking at just reallocating existing funding from other programs or piggybacking on other programs such as climate change, et cetera. Next. And then, of course, it's in order to make that business case and then to know how we're doing along the way is to implement a monitoring and evaluation program and to put that in place as soon as possible so that even the information that's before interventions are made can be collected and then compared to after. And there's different resources that are available that could help in this regard. There's a cost of collision values so that that look at what are the actual costs to society, the healthcare system, et cetera. So for example, Parachute has published a publication on the cost of injury in Canada in 2021 that may be helpful at the local government level, as well as looking at various metrics, not only collisions or injuries, or we know that there are some limitations to the quality and the currency of data. So to look at various other types of data, which are becoming more and more available, public health data, speed data, traffic conflicts, et cetera, and use those as metrics as well, because usually there is a correlation between those items and collisions. And then to report back on a regular basis, such as some municipalities like St. Albert do, provide an excellent report on an annual basis. So I'm going to close my comments by just, I know it's been mentioned a couple of times. I think it's because we're so excited to meet in person again after a few years. The next CARSP conference will be in Sudbury, Ontario, June 19th to 21st. And the theme is collaborating on the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety. So if this presentation has sparked your interest or something that you'd like to get even more involved in terms of hearing what people have to say and interacting with others who you could involve or who could give you ideas, this is the perfect place to get together. There will be a virtual option for the conference to join in, but I think because we recognize that the best interactions can take, and the most effective interactions can take place in person. We're following all the public health protocols and looking at how we could even exceed those in order to make sure everybody who would be interested in this can attend and feel confident in the safety that measures that will be put in place. If you do have any questions about that or about the health protocols or about the conference in general, please do reach out to our executive director, info@carsp.ca. Perhaps that could be put into the chat as well. And Brenda, our wonderful executive director, can provide any information that you need. And kind of an add-on to that conference, after the last day of the conference. So on June 22nd will be a symposium that CARSP will be hosting together with the Ontario Traffic Council on Vision Zero. So the program is still in development, but sounds very interesting so far. If you're able to attend the symposium as well, in addition to the conference or just the symposium, that would be fantastic as well. And just a last one, I know the focus of this presentation was more about in Canada, what we can do, because we know that that's what we have a little more control over. That's what our mandates are here. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we are in a much better situation than many other countries around the world, especially the lower or middle income countries. And it is upon us to do what we can to help. It's obviously been very challenging the last couple of years to be able to, for example, go somewhere or encourage our members to go places. But hopefully that's now becoming a little bit easier. But there's ways to help virtually as well. So whether that be through mentoring others in other countries that you feel you have a connection with, it's something that I think we can do, and we can take a lot of pride in Canada about making a more of a global impact on this decade. And I think we, at least everybody who I know who's been involved in this takes a lot of personal satisfaction out of doing this as well. So at some point, CARSP may come back to the membership and gauge interest in that and see what we might be able to do in terms of that. So that's the end of my portion of the presentation. I'll turn it back to Val for the closing before we take questions.
Thanks, Raheem. So to wrap up, just a few bullets here. Again, I've just dropped my name into, or sorry, my email into the chat. Please feel free to reach out and I can provide you with all the information you need on the Global Decade of Action for Road Safety. We do want to thank our partners at the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. They are taking an amazing leadership role in working with all the countries who have signed on to the resolution. They've been instrumental in coordinating and strategizing amongst all the countries and bringing us together. So big kudos to the Alliance. And keep your eye out on Twitter, the high-level meeting organized by the UN General Assembly on global road safety, as I said, will be in New York. This is only for government and ministers, so NGOs will not be participating, but we will be very active on social media around that time. And then finally, connect if you want information on Commit to Act 2022, May 16th to 20th. There's going to be lots of good stuff going on as well. So that wraps up our presentation, and please feel free to ask Raheem and I any questions, and we'll try to get them answered for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Excellent presentations, very all-encompassing, great overview of what's in the call to action, the North American one, as well as the global plan itself, in terms of what's happening within Canada and how different groups can get involved. So that was excellent. And it's now the question component of the conference. And I'm going to turn to, I've got a few questions here. So the first one is, it's talking about road safety education within schools. And it's asking whether we should be mandating as part of the curriculum to have road safety education in the curriculum. And I'll turn it over to either one of you guys.
So I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I know Parachute does a lot of work on teen driver safety, and many of you on the call today take part in our teen driver safety work. We find we have a hard time even getting into the schools, and Matt Evans is here from the youth safety space as well. But we have a hard time getting into the schools, even just to get road safety engagement and presentations happening outside the curriculum. So yes, getting it into the curriculum would be great because it would be mandated. But all we hear from our teachers is that they are fully at capacity and loaded with the various provincial mandated curriculum. So a great idea, but I'm not sure how we do it.
Yeah, I can add that, you know, we've heard the same thing, and I know ICBC and others have had the same issue. They've developed these resources, but it's hard to actually get the time in the classrooms. And that's why I think, although that attempt should continue, you know, advocacy through the school boards and the municipalities, other tools like those other more established programs, such as, you know, the way people, students get to school and building that safety consciousness through things like crossing guard programs, is a way to go, as well as I know that in some parts of the country there are facilities that are especially built to give young people an opportunity to you know, to drive little cars or drive their bikes in a space where it sort of simulates a road network, where they can kind of build some of those skills and knowledge outside of the classroom.
Great. And I know that within Alberta, they have funded like a bike rodeo. It sounded very much like that. Like, so there's different fun activities you can create to help relay that knowledge to the children. And I have a question myself. For those jurisdictions who have not adopted a safe system approach and or Vision Zero, what advice do you have for them to get the support they need to make that happen?
I can start, and then I know Raheem has a lot of experience working with municipalities as well. At Parachute, we have a lot of really great resources just to get champions in various cities off to help them get Vision Zero into council. A lot of 101 type presentations on what is Vision Zero, why do Vision Zero, and how to. And we've supported a lot of municipalities get to that stage, and then from there they tend to, once they have support at their council level, then they tend to work with engineers and so forth. But yeah, lots of resources for any jurisdictions looking to bring in Vision Zero.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing, and I know other organizations like TAC is also working on a kind of a primer for what are the key Vision Zero principles and safe system principles in a language that anyone can understand. So yeah, just taking advantage of those resources that are available through our organizations. I know CARS also on its website has a section on road safety information, which provides some of the basics of road safety principles. And then other than that, I think, in as much interaction with other governments that have had perhaps a higher degree of success is important, and that's why through conferences and networking and other things, like hopefully even today, you've got some ideas of who you might be able to talk to for certain things to try to further your initiatives at your level.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I have a great question here. They're wondering, what role do you see police playing in the coming years, over 5 years, or in the next 10 years? Specifically, what do you think is actually achievable by them? And also, what is the best possible sort of pie in the sky outcome or options?
So there had been a question around unreliable speed limits and lowering the speed limit. Should we lower the speed limit and change the environment afterwards? I'll address that and to some extent address the policing question in that.
Okay.
My answer to the earlier question on what comes first, the speed reduction or the environmental change, the Vision Zero and Safe Systems approach, as many of you know, would absolutely advocate for both of those interventions to happen at the same time. And for one intervention, wherever possible, not to happen without the other. So where we're reducing speed limits, we should also be changing the environment. We should also be adding in education. We should be looking at equity as a fourth E as well, in terms of, where are we doing the speed reduction, and is the community in need? So I would say when it comes to policing, we need to do it in consultation with some of the other components like built environment. And then I'm going to hand over the trickier question to Raheem to answer around where the police will be in 5 to 10 years.
Oh, well, thank you, Val. I honestly do not have any particular insight. I can just offer my my opinion that although automated methods are becoming more and more prevalent, and that's necessary in order to cover more and more locations over a longer period of the day, that does not diminish the importance and role of actual police officers. They're still one of the main faces of road safety, and the public, at least to an extent, values what they have to say, and they're the protectors of public safety. And also having that visible presence, has been shown to be effective, in addition to automated methods. So certainly, I don't see the role of police changing in terms of that. But again, I know, I mean, with all the changes and all the attention that the police have got for various reasons, I don't have any particular insight on to how that may impact road safety. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you both. And I just want to add that many jurisdictions have road safety standing committees that are cross-cutting different departments, and they basically look at road safety as an overall citywide issue or jurisdiction-wide issue, and it gives you a chance to talk to all the other professions. And also just another little plug for the Vision Zero Symposium that we have coming up on June 22nd. There's a component where we're going to be putting people into multidisciplinary groups and presenting them with a road safety issue and giving them an opportunity to actually discuss how they would each approach it from each of their perspectives. So it's a really insightful activity. I also had another question, and we talked earlier about children and how to involve, or I guess teach them about road safety. But I think as well, there are great resources, as Raheem had alluded to. They are really the future. They're the ones that are going to be impacted the most by our decisions today. How can we involve them in these plans to, to possibly reduce, well, our goal to reduce 50% deaths and injuries? How can we involve youth, university students? How can we get them engaged? And Val, do you want to go first?
Are you talking generally in road safety?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all the organizations, many of them I see here today, are already doing a really great job involving youth. You've got groups like Mad and Sad who have amazing chapters throughout Canada made up of young people at university and high school levels. You've got OSAD, you've got our National Teen Driver Safety Week, and I've missed a ton of organizations. Teens Learn to Drive. I think you just engage youth as much as possible in the planning. We have a new youth committee funded by Transport Canada called For Youth by Youth, and it's about 20 youth from across the country, and we're working with them to develop research around what works with youth and what doesn't. So we'll be putting out a report on that. But certainly we should all be engaging youth if we're talking about road safety.
Maybe I'll just add that, in the process that of developing like a strategic or action plan, public engagement is usually an important part of that, or it should be. And through that, I think, there could be targeted consultations with various segments of the public, and that's a great opportunity to involve them. Other than that, on the more operational level, things like the safe travel planning and active routes to school and things like that I talked about earlier, the youth should be, if they aren't, involved in actually developing those plans. And I know in many municipalities, they are really taking the lead in developing their own plans that they would use, and they're more likely to be used effectively if they are very much involved. So that's a specific example that I think we can learn from in terms of how to involve the youth actively in our programs.
Perfect. Thanks to both of you. So I have another question that's come in. What is going to happen in Canada during the Call to Action Week in May? And I think we're talking about the Commit to Act campaign. And I think they're just wondering if there's any kind of activities that are planned at present.
Yeah, so Parachute's going to be supporting the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety to raise awareness on Commit to Act and provide downloads and so forth to any interested parties who do want to take part. We're going to be very active in social during that time. And we will, as I said, we will be providing information to any Canadian organizations. We'll also be sharing that through our Vision Zero network, and I'm sure Karst will be doing that through their network. Certainly we'll be participating in the social media, the Twitter party, and we'll be encouraging communities to roll out one of the shoe pile campaigns and attract and build some local media in their communities.
Okay, perfect. And did you want to add to that, Raheem, or?
No, I think Val covered it off well.
Good. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that one of the things that the Global Alliance said that we could use that week for is to try and garner more support for the actions that are laid out in the global plan, and possibly even advocating for some government level adoption of the plan, that we could then take that information to the UN General Assembly that's going to be held in June to show our support So I think there's a desire for us to use advocacy at that time as well to get support within Canada for the plan. Let's just see here. You'd mentioned before private sectors and how we need to involve them as potential funders, Raheem. I'm wondering as well what your thoughts are on involving them in the decision-making component of road safety planning.
Well, that's, I think, a really important question, because the last thing you want to do is come up with a plan and then take it to somebody and say, here, fund this, right? I mean, the more involvement, the better. You obviously have to be a little bit careful when it comes to private sector. It could be a competitive environment, but if people are coming forward offering to be a part of it, I think you do discuss that, and you take advantage of that. Sometimes to maybe bypass some of the perception of favoring certain companies over others, you could work through things like business improvement associations or chambers of commerce, and they could sort of represent the voice of the private sector as well, in whether it's at the strategic city or province-wide level, or for a particular initiative. But there's also various other kind of forums that could be organized by government, like a larger stakeholder consultation. And there's no reason, I think, why private organizations couldn't be a part of that. It could be like an open-ended invitation, and whoever comes forward could come forward and take part in that. And if the more they're involved in the decision making, I think they're more likely to be involved in then supporting, whether it's through funding, providing funds for certain things, or even within their own organizations. If they have the tools to, whether it's encourage, safer use of vehicles among their employees, or, encourage shift to public transit through incentive programs. There's a lot that employers can do, and that's why we raised it as an area. Most people work, right? So if you can hear the same messages through your employer that you hear through organizations like ours, or the other ways that you are hearing it, then I think that will only help the big picture.
Perfect. Val, do you have anything to add?
No, Raheem covered it. That's great.
Perfect. Okay, well, I've got a question for you now. You mentioned that the North American call to action. How do you foresee this document being used to mobilize action in Canada? I know that's a big, wide question, but just in general, broad brush strokes.
2 minutes left.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's a really high level document. When we started writing it with our partners, it was about 12 pages. And for the sake of consistency, it was the Alliance reduced it to 3 pages. As I said, it's very aligned with the high level action points in the global plan. What I would love to see happen, and I've kind of voluntold parachute that we'll be doing a lot of work around this, is helping to lead our NGOs, partners on this call, some of the national provincial organizations, to come up with a more Canadianized version of the call to action, with more feasible and micro action points. So right now it's up here. I would like to see us work with all the folks here today, any organizations that want to take part, to try to come up with something that's a little more feasible in Canada, with some clear deliverables, clear strategies, timelines, who's going to do what. I'm always talking about the need for us to work together. So we're not doing the same thing. We're building on each other and working as a team. And when I say that, I mean all of the different organizations that are interested. The more, the merrier. And we will be working with you guys at CARSP to help try to mobilize the call to action in Canada.
I fully support that, and I know you do too, Raheem. So that's awesome. We're definitely looking forward to doing that with you. And we have one more question to kind of finish us off, and we could just talk about it briefly, I guess, in terms of what the plan might be. But it is, what if all Canadian road safety NGOs sent letters to the Federal Minister of Transport asking him to commit to act during that week in May, perhaps Carson Parachute could provide a draft letter that could be used by NGOs. I think it's a great idea. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, meeting to mobilize is going to be really important. And we want to engage really positively with the federal government and with all levels of government. I think the more support we can get from the federal government for the not only the events in May, but more for the high-level meeting at the end of June. Because we can't go to that. It has to be a federal minister or someone within their cabinet that takes part. So yeah, I think really collaborating to encourage and engage the government is a great idea.
And any closing thoughts on that, Raheem?
I just reinforce that the more voices and the more letters, the better. Now, as to the role that we could play as Cars or Parachute, I think that's something we can, I think, talk about, is perhaps providing a draft letter, and we can maybe discuss the best way to disseminate that. But if you are, certainly looking at do that, do also just contact us directly, and